I want to tell you about the morning I came home from holiday and tried to open my shop. I had been away for 12 days. My first proper holiday in 11 years, Portugal, warm and quiet, exactly what my doctor had been telling me I needed since my blood pressure started climbing 3 years ago. I had left the shop in the hands of my daughter-in-law Serena, who had been working there for 2 years and who I had trusted completely. I came back with a tan, a small ceramic tile I had bought for the kitchen, and the particular happiness of someone who has rested properly for the first time in a very long time. I put my key in the lock. The key didn't turn. I tried again. And again. And then I looked more carefully at the door and saw that the lock had been changed. And then I looked at the window and saw that the sign I had designed myself 31 years ago, cream with burgundy lettering, that said Eleanor's, EST 1984, had been replaced. The new sign said Serena's Boutique. I stood on that pavement for a long time. My name is Eleanor. I am 71 years old. I opened that shop when I was 31 with £400 and a second-hand sewing machine. And what I am about to tell you is the story of how I got it back, every stitch of it. Before I tell you what Serena did, I need to tell you what that shop meant. Eleanor's was not just a shop. It was the thing I had built with my hands when everything else was falling apart. My first husband had left when I was 29, taking most of our savings and all of our shared plans. I had a son, Marcus, 2 years old, and a talent for sewing that my mother had always called impractical and that I was about to prove was the only practical thing I had. I found a small unit on a quiet high street, the kind of place that smelled of old carpet and possibility, and I signed a lease I could barely afford, and I opened Eleanor's on a Tuesday morning in March 1984 with a handwritten sign in the window and absolute terror in my stomach. The first week I made £11. The second week I made 32. By the end of the first year I had a small but loyal group of customers, mostly women who wanted alterations done properly, who had been let down by fast fashion and wanted something made to last. I learned their names, their sizes, their daughters' wedding dates, their mother's funeral preferences. I learned that a good seamstress is part craftsperson and part counselor and part keeper of secrets, and I was good at all three. I expanded twice. I took on 2 members of staff. I moved to a bigger unit on the same street, prime position, corner spot, double windows, and I redesigned the sign and put EST 1984 on it because I had earned that date and I wanted everyone to see it. I remarried at 45, a good man named Howard who fixed things around the shop and made me laugh and never once suggested I should sell up or slow down. Howard died 4 years ago. The shop carried me through his death the way it had carried me through everything, by giving me somewhere to be and something necessary to do. Marcus grew up in that shop. He did his homework at the cutting table. He learned to sew a straight seam at 8 years old. He told me once, at 17, that he was more proud of Eleanor's than of anything else in his life, and I held that sentence for years like a pressed flower. Marcus married Serena 9 years ago. She was sharp and fashionable and immediately interested in the shop, in its potential, its footfall, its profit margins, in ways that I found flattering at first and should have found alarming. She came to work there 2 years ago. She said she wanted to learn the business. She said she wanted to help me plan for the future. She said she had ideas about modernizing that I might find exciting. I said wonderful. I handed her a key. I stood on the pavement outside Serena's boutique and I called Marcus. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called Serena. She answered on the 4th ring. She said, "Eleanor. You're back. How was Portugal?" I said, "Serena. There is a sign on my shop that says your name." A pause. Then, "Oh, yes. I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I've actually been doing some restructuring while you were away. I think it's going to be really exciting for the business." Restructuring. I said, the lock has been changed. She said, yes, I had the whole security system updated. Very necessary. I'll get you a new key sorted. I said, Serena. Whose name is the business registered in? The pause this time was longer. She said, look, I think this is a conversation we should all have together, you, me, and Marcus. I said, whose name, Serena? She said, mine. But it's really not as dramatic as it sounds. I found some paperwork irregularities and I had to. I ended the call. I sat down on the low wall outside my shop, the shop I had opened 40 years ago with £400 and a second-hand sewing machine, and I called my solicitor. His name was David. He had been my solicitor for 22 years. When I explained what had happened, he was quiet for a moment and then he said, Eleanor, don't say another word to either of them. Come to my office. Right now. I went. What David found over the following 2 days was methodical and devastating. Serena had, over the course of the 12 days I was in Portugal, filed paperwork with Companies House to register the business under a new name, Serena's Boutique Limited, with herself as sole director. She had done this using a technicality. The original Eleanor's had been operating as a sole trader under my name, not as a limited company, and there were gaps in the formal documentation that she had identified and exploited with the help of a business consultant I had never met or heard of. She had also opened new supplier accounts in the business's new name. She had contacted our 2 members of staff and told them the business was under new management. One of them, a woman named June who had been with me for 14 years, had called me the moment she heard, weeping, asking what was happening. The other had signed the new contracts. I had been gone for 12 days. 12 days. Marcus called me that evening. He said he was sorry. He said he hadn't known the full extent of what Serena was planning. He said she had told him she was tidying up the business structure and he had assumed she meant something administrative. I listened to all of this. Then I said, Marcus, you did your homework at my cutting table. You learned to sew a straight seam in that shop. You told me at 17 that Eleanor's was the thing you were most proud of in your life. Do you remember saying that? A long silence. He said, yes. I said, then I need you to decide right now whose side you are on. Not tomorrow. Not after you have spoken to Serena again. Right now. Another silence. The longest of my life. He said, yours, Mum. I'm on yours. I said, then I need you to give a full witness statement to David tomorrow morning. He said, I'll be there at 9. He was there at 8:45. Serena did not know Marcus was coming. When she found out, she called him 17 times in 2 hours. He did not answer. That took courage. I know what it costs a person to choose between a spouse and a parent. I will never forget that he chose, and I will never take it for granted. David was thorough and completely without mercy, which is exactly what I needed him to be. The legal argument rested on several pillars. The first was proof of continuous trading under the Eleanor's name for 40 years, which I had in abundance, tax records, supplier invoices, customer testimonials, press mentions, 40 years of receipts. The second was the manner of the registration. David argued that Serena had exploited a position of trust and access granted to her as an employee and family member, and that this constituted fraud. The third, and this became the most important, was Marcus's witness statement. Marcus testified that Serena had explicitly told him she was making the changes while Eleanor won't notice, and had asked him not to mention the Companies House filing until she had sorted everything properly. That phrase, while Eleanor won't notice, appeared in David's legal submissions 4 times. Serena hired her own solicitor, a young man who David told me afterward was out of his depth. She argued that she had identified serious structural problems with the business and had acted in its best interests. She produced documents suggesting the business had been in financial difficulty. David produced 40 years of accounts. Eleanor's had been profitable for 37 of its 40 years. The three unprofitable years were 2008, 2009, and 2020, years that every small business in the country could explain. The judge was not a woman who wasted words. She said the registration was fraudulent and ordered it reversed immediately. She awarded me full legal costs. She noted that Serena's actions had caused significant distress and reputational damage to a business built by Ms. Eleanor Hartley over 4 decades, and that the exploitation of family trust for financial gain was particularly egregious. Particularly egregious. I wrote those words down. I framed them. They hang in the back room of Eleanor's now, next to Howard's photograph. The morning I unlocked Eleanor's with my new key, the one David had cut after the court order came through, June was waiting outside when I arrived. She had brought flowers. Not from a petrol station, proper flowers, from the florist 2 doors down who had sent me a card during the whole business saying she was thinking of me. I unlocked the door. We went in. Serena had changed things while I was away, some of the layouts, some of the stock, the color of the walls in the fitting room, which had been my signature pale green for 30 years and was now an aggressively modern charcoal that I disliked immediately and changed back within a week. But the cutting table was still there. The original one, solid oak, bought secondhand in 1987 and still the truest flat surface I have ever worked on. I put my hand on it. 40 years of fabric had passed across that table. 40 years of women's stories, weddings and funerals and graduations and first dates and the quiet everyday clothing needs of ordinary lives lived with dignity. I thought about Howard fixing the loose leg in 2003. I thought about Marcus doing his homework at the far corner. I thought about the first piece I ever cut on it, a blue linen skirt for a woman named Patricia who had been my 3rd ever customer and who still came in twice a year. I thought, nobody can register this in their name. This belongs to time and to work and to 40 years of showing up. No paperwork can touch it. June put the flowers in water. I turned the sign to open. Patricia came in at 9:10. She said, "Eleanor. I heard what happened. Are you all right?" I said, "I'm open." She said, "Good. I need a skirt." I laughed. For the first time in 3 weeks. Properly. Serena and Marcus separated 6 months after the court ruling. I did not cause this and I did not celebrate it. A marriage ending is not a victory. It is a loss for everyone involved, and I have said so every time anyone has suggested I should feel satisfaction about it. Marcus comes for dinner every Sunday. He sits at my kitchen table and talks about his week, and occasionally, when he thinks I am not paying attention, he looks at me with an expression that I recognize as the one he wore at 17 when he told me Eleanor's was the thing he was most proud of. He has not remarried. He is, I think, doing the careful work of understanding what he values and what he will not compromise again. That is enough for now. Eleanor's is thriving. We have a waiting list for alterations, something that has never happened in 40 years. I think the publicity from the court case brought people in out of solidarity, and they stayed because the work is good. That seems right to me. June got a raise. She deserved one 10 years ago, and I am not too proud to admit it. Patricia got her skirt, navy blue linen, same as the first one I ever made her, 39 years ago. She said it was the best one yet. I believed her. I am 71 years old. I am standing behind my cutting table on a Tuesday morning in March, and I am exactly where I have always been and exactly where I intend to stay. Eleanor's. EST 1984. Still here. I want to say something to every woman who has built something. Not just a shop. Not just a business. Anything. A garden. A community. A reputation. A family. Anything that grew from your hands and your time and your refusal to stop showing up even when it was hard. That thing is yours. It is yours in a way that goes deeper than paperwork and registration documents and companies' house filings. It is yours in the way that 40 years of work is yours, in the grain of the cutting table, in the receipts and the tax records, in the loyalty of a woman who brings you flowers on the morning you reopen, in the customer who walks in and says I need a skirt and makes you laugh for the first time in 3 weeks. Nobody can register that in their own name. Nobody can lock you out of 40 years. They can change the sign. They can change the lock. They cannot change what you built or what it means or who it belongs to. Get a good solicitor. Keep your receipts. Know the value of what you have created. And never, not for a holiday, not for anything, hand someone the key without being very sure of who they are. I learned that the hard way. Eleanor's is EST 1984. It will be EST 1984 long after I am gone. Nobody is changing that sign again. If Eleanor's story moved you, please give this video a like and subscribe. We share powerful stories every single day. Share this with every woman who has built something and deserves to keep it. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done standing on that pavement? What would you have said to Marcus? Every word matters. I read everything.